and welcome to our guest, Dr. Lou Akinson. You are a behaviour psychologist and researcher. I would love to start off with a little bit about GLP-1s and ask you, first of all, for our listeners, what they are, because there's a lot of talk about what they are, where they've come from, but I just thought, let's ask the experts.
Oh, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. And yeah, this is a topic I seem to be talking about a lot. And a lot of that, I think, is a bit of myth busting and a bit of, let's get to the facts of what they are, what we know and what we don't know. So when we use the umbrella term GLP-1s, what we're really referring to is GLP-1 agonist medications. And these are medications that mimic the GLP-1 hormone, which is associated with making us feel fuller and with appetite. So it really works in the endocrine system, but also works through a number of mechanisms as well. So there's the biological side, but there's also the behavioral side as well. So the medications were originally developed to treat conditions like type 2 diabetes, because clearly that's an endocrine disorder. And through treating people with type 2 diabetes, it was observed that a lot of users had a significant weight loss. Clinical trials followed to test the effects of these medications as a treatment for obesity in itself without necessarily any sort of comorbidities. And if you've seen any of the results from the clinical trials, they were fantastic. We saw weight loss of up to sort of 20% in users over a period of around a year, normally, of treatment. And because of that, they were fairly quickly licensed for a primary condition of obesity. There are lots of different types of these drugs. They all are slightly different in their formula, of course, but they basically work in the same way. So they slow digestion, so they slow the passage of food through the gut. As I said, they mimic these hormones, which means that people who are taking them feel fuller and their appetite is reduced. And that has a behavioral impact as well, where because they feel less hungry, they tend to eat smaller amounts of food. And because of that, we see weight loss. So yeah, they've been a real game changer. I've worked in the field of obesity now, both sort of as a practitioner and as a researcher for over 20 years. And this is the first new treatment where it's not just incredibly effective, but it's also accessible, because the only results we would see like this through other treatments would be bariatric surgery, which, while it can be incredibly beneficial for people, is major surgery and comes with all of those risks. So GLP-1s are a radical new treatment, and like any radical new treatment, they come with ups and downs.
I first came across them actually with a client of mine who was struggling with obesity, and local hospital, St George's, they had a program to help, and of course they mentioned this Gila monster and it spit and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So that's where they get the GLP-1 from, isn't it?
I mean, I'm not, that's news to me. I know I don't work in the pharmaceutical industry. So to be honest, where it comes from, I've never really investigated, but the key is that it's able to really effectively mimic what's natural in our bodies and produce the same effect.
Well, apparently, I think this monster lizard, basically in its saliva, because of its environment, every now and again, it has no food for ages. And so the GLP-1 shrinks its appetite and its stomach. And then obviously, when there's more food available, it can rapidly change and start to eat again. For her, that was because of diabetes. So what's happened, from my understanding, is the dosage has increased vastly. So once they found out the side effects of the GLP-1 for diabetes, they increased the dosages. Is that how we got like the Ozempic and
Well, so the drug is exactly the same. It's just
yeah,
being deployed in different ways, absolutely. And if you think about type 2 diabetes as a chronic condition, as I said, it's a failure of the endocrine system in some ways. And so the drugs would have been formulated as a long-term treatment. The difference with obesity, which, I would definitely argue against necessarily, is that, oh, well, once somebody's lost weight, then their condition is cured and it goes away. What we know about the the causes of obesity is that it's way, way more complex than that. And what we see, therefore, is actually a lot of people will regain the weight when they come off the treatment. So I think that what we're going to see develop in the near future is treatments for different people in different ways who have different circumstances, different biology, different genetics, but also different underlying causes for their obesity. So it's fundamentally the same drug, yes, but it's being used in lots of different ways. And I think that there are certainly some people who are currently living with obesity who will become a lot healthier as a result of taking this drug, not only because they will lose weight, but all the other cardiometabolic benefits that they'll get, like lower blood pressure, better blood sugar control, etc. And they may well stay on a maintenance dose for a very long time, all the rest of their life. Whereas other people may find that the intervention only needs to be temporary, and they will be able to reduce or come off the drug completely and perhaps live drug free for a significant amount of time or forever. But as you know, Joe, this is where we in the fitness sector come in terms of actually, if we are going to look at this as a temporary intervention, we need to prepare people to change their lifestyle, ideally during treatment, so that when they reduce or come off the drugs completely, they don't regain the weight, they don't have a reversal of those cardiometabolic benefits. And that will only come with sustained lifestyle change.
I
Can
think.
we go?
Oh,
Oh, I'm sorry,
sorry.
Jen.
Yeah, go. No, I'm just excited. You go for it. But I've got two things written down there from that.
Fire away.
No, go on. Go on.
Oh, well, one thing
I
was
don't.
who's taking it because the cost of it as well. And the other thing I wanted to address was something that you said in the talk was food noise. And I was reading an article of a gentleman who'd been taking this drug, and it really stuck with me because he said, "Oh, this is what it's like to not be hungry."
Mm-hmm.
And he had never experienced not having this continual food noise. And that to me is massive.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where people who haven't lived with obesity or haven't worked in this field don't understand, because they think it's a simple equation of, well, just eat less and move more. And of course, if it was that simple, lots more people would be able to achieve a healthier weight. So, yeah, one of the key reasons that people always tell us about when we do research with people on obesity is feelings of never feeling full. I can eat and eat and eat, and then 45 minutes, an hour later, I feel hungry again. Even though I know I couldn't possibly need that amount of food, I can't just switch off the hunger. I can't just, the only way to stop feeling hungry is to eat. And related to that, but not the same thing, so there's appetite on one side and sort of never feeling full, but then there's also the food noise, as you mentioned, and that is more to do with an individual's thoughts being occupied by food all the time, and for a lot of individuals, that isn't. It's just thinking about, oh, I want to eat this, I want to eat that. It's actually the struggle with things like diet culture and weight stigma and the pressure to be thin and sort of societal ideals around body shape and size, in that they're fighting a constant battle in their mind where on one hand their body is telling them that they should eat and that they're hungry, their brain is telling them that if I eat this delicious food it will make me feel good, but their cognitions, their beliefs and their values and their attitudes are telling them that they should want to not eat and they should want to be thin and they should want to be smaller than they are. And it's that constant battle of all of those different thoughts and emotions and processes going on that the medications calm down and they're no longer occupied by all of those thoughts. They don't have the cravings for food, and they also experience that lower appetite. So they do eat and feel full, as you say, probably for many people for the first time and as long as they can remember.
Can we talk about behavior modification and
Always.
sustainable behavior change? Because there's always a lot of noise on the internet. To say that is like, thank you, Captain Obvious. But there's a narrative coming out of the health and fitness industry, and it's a narrative that I'll just say I understand, because a lot of people who get into the health and fitness industry as a profession have experienced the transformative impact of an active lifestyle. And there's a
Sure.
lot of emotion and conviction attached. And it seems like the narrative is anything that would interfere or replace long-term behavior change is not a good idea. And I understand that. On the other hand, Charles Duhigg has some great stuff in The Power of Habit, where he talks about keystone habits. And a lot of the people that I've worked with, and I think all of us resemble this in some area, it's not laziness or unwillingness. It is a belief system that I have tried. Forget about the efficacy of the strategy put forth. I have tried so many times. And I've always come back to where I am today. So therefore, and a great example is the person who says, I'm going to quit smoking. And finally, they're able to quit smoking. And that was it. And that's a tremendous accomplishment. But because I quit smoking without even realizing it, I feel better. So I'm engaging in movement more. And the more I move, the better I feel. And I think, wow, you know what? What if I started to exercise? I start to exercise. And not only do I feel better, but I'm building this body of evidence around self-efficacy. So now for the first time in my life, I'm considering dietary changes. And because of my dietary changes and my movement, my sleep improves. Wait, what if I did this deliberately? And it's all because I was able to demonstrate that a shift is possible. So when we talk about people who are on GLP-1s for the rest of their lives and people who progress off of it, what's some of the evidence or even your opinion around how GLP-1 could support long-term lifestyle behavior change?
Yeah, it's a really interesting area, and what I would say is we're very much in the emerging evidence phase. We need to do a lot more research to understand who would regain weight if they came off the medications and why. And we need to do a lot more research to understand the best ways to help someone change their lifestyle alongside the drugs. We need to do a lot more research into optimum exercise prescription, for example. But fundamentally, I think you've really nailed some of the key reasons why these drugs are a life changer. So if you were to put yourself in the shoes of someone who's living with obesity, they are almost certainly very aware of the benefits of physical activity. They will almost certainly have tried to be active, probably on multiple occasions. So we talked about this in the panel last week in terms of there's a slight misconception sometimes that these individuals have never walked through the doors of a gym before. Some of them that will be true, but a lot of them they will have tried before. Because they are living with that excess weight, they are probably in some level of pain. Mm-hmm. They don't feel comfortable in their bodies necessarily. They feel this social stigma, so they don't feel they belong in exercise spaces. And all of those things are barriers to them developing that physical activity habit. So, and I was having some really good conversations with fitness operators just this week, where they're reporting and saying, I'm having members cancel their membership because they see GLP-1s as an alternative to exercise or an easier option to exercise. But some of those come back after they've lost the weight. And that reinforces what we know when we speak to people living with obesity, which is, I can't exercise because I'm in too much pain. It's too uncomfortable. I'm too worried about hurting myself. When they lose some weight, that increases that confidence. It reduces that fear and that concern. And also, again, yeah, they have increased their confidence in themselves and in their ability to do hard things. So absolutely self-efficacy increases, confidence and self-esteem, self-worth, because our society values smallness and thinness, or in the fitness world, not necessarily being thin, but looking athletic, being lean, for example, or being muscular rather than just being big. unfortunately, that is internalized by all of us to some degree. So those individuals, when they lose weight, they feel they are more valuable in society. It gives them that boost to their self-worth, that they're more likely to go into an exercise space, they're more likely to feel confident to be among other people, etc. And then, yeah, the sort of snowballing of lifestyle change again is really interesting, because very early on, once the drugs got into the real world and they were implemented as a real treatment as opposed to clinical trials, we start getting this data that says, actually, I don't crave cigarettes anymore. I don't drink alcohol anymore because I don't want it. My brain isn't telling me that I want these things. So there's that interesting effect of the drug in itself seems to have a real blunting effect on all sorts of cravings. We also see in some people this mood elevation, which is likely more to do with those feelings of self-confidence and self-worth than anything necessarily biological, but we don't know the mechanisms of that. And so, yeah, there does seem to be a helpful snowball effect. The dietary changes often come as a result of the side effects of the drugs, and it's another reason why the fitness sector has a real key role to play in helping people to develop healthy habits, because what we're seeing reported is individuals start taking the drugs, they don't feel as hungry, they feel quite frankly nauseous and bloated, and they have diarrhea or constipation or switch between the two, and so they start just eating smaller portions to minimize those side effects, or because they're not feeling as hungry, but they're not necessarily switching to a healthier, nutrient-rich diet. So some people find that blander foods and high fiber foods, for example, are really helpful with their side effects. But someone who doesn't experience as significant side effects, they're just tending to reduce their portions, which means that they're probably not getting all the nutrients they need, and potentially developing a sort of habit where they're just having small meals, but poor macro and micronutrient content. So there's a lot of education potentially that we can be doing. And similarly with the physical activity, of course, GLP-1s are not an alternative to physical activity. We know that someone who lives with obesity, who reaches their physical activity guidelines, or at least increases their physical activity from a low baseline, will experience significant health and well-being benefits, even if they don't lose a single pound. And similarly with the GLP-1s, we don't have the evidence yet for exactly how exercise might contribute to both weight loss and health outcomes. But we do know that exercise is good for you. So we do know that it will have all of the benefits that it would have in anyone else, but those benefits could be compounded by the GLP-1 benefits. And it could make someone feel even better and become even healthier. And the message so far hasn't got across to individual users that all of these things should be done together.
There's so much things on my mind right now. Thank you for that. And it's not just the beliefs of the patients or the clients, if you will. It's the belief systems of the operators. And I just want to say, first of all, if I'm an operator and I am losing members as a result of anything definitive in the data, you need to have an opinion about that. That is very serious. So I understand where that's coming from, especially if your livelihood is connected to that attrition. It's very hard to remove the emotion from it. But I think some of the beliefs we have is around certain archetypes within fitness. And it's like, okay, people want the result. They want the outcome. But fundamentally, people do not want to engage in what's required to facilitate that outcome. And I'm not saying that's not true. That very well might be true. But it could also be, to some degree, a cognitive distortion. And if you have cognitive distortion, especially if it's industry-wide and has a lot of social evidence within your reference group to support it, looking for confirmations like, well, where else is this true? Well, look at everybody within this category. They're behaving the same way. That's a little bit illogical. For me, it's like, where can you disprove the presupposition. And if you look at a lot of people who are struggling in one area, well, these are people that hold down jobs very often. They send kids to university. They've had extremely successful careers. You know, they've gotten a degree. They're accomplished people in multiple other aspects. What else is going on? And I think when somebody leaves your facility, you could react to that based on your interpretation of past experiences, or you can step back and say, okay, what are the threats here and what are the opportunities? How do we respond? And that might start with changing your belief systems. Let's just say our belief systems. Even though I work in a different industry, I still feel connected to health and fitness. And do those belief systems change the way we see ourselves and the way we engage with our clientele? If we are modulators or if we are providers of exercise, that's one thing. If we are individuals that have a coaching-based approach and facilitate a series of decisions that are built upon people's strengths, not the absence of character traits, and it's built on autonomy, it might actually expand the scope through which people can engage with us.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's so much there. First of all, again, we all have this internalized stigma to a degree, and I think in the fitness world, as you say, it's full of people for whom they have managed to become physically active consistently on their own journey, or it was something that was always part of their life, always part of their identity, and so it's really difficult to relate to an individual who isn't in the same place. And as humans, we are hardwired for efficiency. So if we put ourselves in the shoes of the GLP-1 user and these individuals who are saying, look, I have been coming to your facility for 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. I've been working away. I've been doing the things that you've been telling me. I haven't lost the weight that I want to lose. You know, Joe Bloggs at the school gates tells me he's done GLP-1s for 3 months and he's lost, 50 pounds, whatever. And he doesn't go to the gym at all. It's a simple decision to make because first of all, you feel let down. You were made promises. We're very good in the fitness world at making promises. We can transform your body, if you just do all the things that we tell you to do. And then when they don't do the things that we tell them to do, like eat a healthy diet and, not eat excessively and not emotionally, etc., we sort of throw our hands up and say, well, it's not on me. I told you what to do. You didn't do it. So you just have to keep trying. And then, the individual is saying, well, opportunity costs, right? Like, why do I spend the money on the membership? Why do I spend the time doing something that I fundamentally find either tolerable or unpleasant? Because the majority of people who go to a structured exercise environment, aren't going there because it's the best part of their day. They're going there because they know they have to for their health. They want to because they want to get the outcomes from it. And then they're suddenly offered a way to swap doing that, both time and money and effort, for something that seems easy. Now, so in terms of how do we address that, there's a huge amount of messaging that needs to be done. Coming back to that point around the benefits of exercise and physical activity separate from weight loss, but running alongside it. There's also the messaging that GLP-1s is not an easy path. More than some of the data suggests more than half of people, again, in the real world, not in clinical trials, when they start GLP-1s, they will stop using them before 12 weeks, either due to the side effects, due to the cost, due to shortages, lots and lots of reasons. But fundamentally, we're not seeing good adherence to these medications. And the people who stick with them over the long term get the results, but they say it's not been easy. There are lots and lots of downsides. So we don't want a message that says, don't do GLP-1s because it's not easy, but we do want a message that says, we are here to support you through the tricky parts of this. And I genuinely believe, again, as a fitness professional, as a coach, that we have the skills. Someone is going to have a really bad day and feel really, really bad when they're starting out on this journey. And we have the skills to get them through that. So I think the industry definitely has to address, as you say, their own beliefs and cognitions, and the way that they see someone's health journey. I also think that structurally operators are not building products, programs, memberships that work for someone on this type of journey, because they are going to have a week at a time where they feel awful. They may not be able to exercise due to low energy, calorie deficit, nausea, side effects for a couple of months, 2 or 3 months, until they get onto a maintenance dose, until their body adapts and they start to feel better. But what we don't want is people to cancel their membership. So we need a membership that adapts as they go through that journey and that is focused on the long term. Again, we're so focused in this industry on 3 months and 12 months. Can I keep someone's membership? Can I keep them paying me for 3 months or 12 months? And then can I get them to renew after that? We need to be looking at this as probably a 2 to 3 year journey, taking someone from making the decision to getting to a place where their health is where they want it to be, their weight's where they want it to be, and their lifestyle is where they want it to be.
Wow, that is extremely interesting. I'm not gonna jump in. I'm just gonna, because I want to hear what your thoughts are, Joe. But you've said some interesting things I want to revisit.
There are so many things in there, and it is such a big topic. And again, the time span of the research that we've got, what's happening after 12 months. I think there are some 4 year studies, and a lot of people do regain weight after stopping the medication. But what struck me as you were talking was collaboration, because with the skills of coaching, with the skills of being able to address an understanding of the medication, the symptoms they might be going through. And I'm going to call it and say it. As an industry, we've been pretty toxic, and we have delivered a message around weight loss, and we still have this aesthetics to the industry, punishment. Even the other day, I think it's fabulous what Joe Wicks is doing with his cereal bars. He's made this killer cereal bar, but he's still demonstrated this is I'm eating this junk food, and then said, and part of my message is still to inspire people. The next thing, he's on the treadmill, and that takes away building the enjoyment of exercise. And if we can, and the other thing is, like you mentioned, we're setting people up for a failure. And the research from Herman Ponsner was really clear that the expectation of the Hasda tribe, their metabolism should have been much faster than the average American. And yet when they did those studies, that didn't come out the same. So our metabolisms start to change. But my point being, if we can take away this brutal message of go and do exercise because of the food that you ate or didn't eat, and if we can rebrand that, I mean, it's almost like we have to find these reasons to sell movement, yet isn't that it makes you feel incredible, or it helps you rediscover feeling like a badass, or it makes you rediscover what makes you feel powerful, emotional, tapping in. And I think that we spoke very briefly around people talking about creating a program for these people, and I wanted to convulse when I heard this, because it's creating programs for unique individuals. We all have such different things that make us go, oh, I love that. The spark that makes our eyelid lift or our breath change. And I really do believe that this is an opportunity where we can make a difference as operators, club owners, as personal trainers, to not be cookie cutter, but to actually really sit and get to know our clients, what they might like. Because if they come for 5 minutes and have a good experience, they're more likely to come back. And as everyone's talking about, oh, well, you really need to do strength training, anyone who's told that they really need to do something is probably going to go, yeah, okay, well, thanks anyway. I'll leave that environment because I don't feel comfortable. So I think coming back to bringing it back over, that collaboration seems to be really important, and helping to get to know the person in front of us.
Yeah, I think there's a lot in there. I think, what I would always say, will always defend the fitness sector, to the hilt, because I don't think they're the root cause of it. I think that they do unwittingly perpetuate some of those,
Thank you. Yes.
outdated, stigmas and attitudes, to a degree. But also, we all know fantastic individuals within the sector who are incredibly passionate about helping people. They're in it for the right reasons. They're well educated and they're doing a phenomenal job. So, I think we should always think of how can we change the sector for the better, and think about what we can offer for individuals. And to your point about basically intrinsic motivation, this is something that I talk about all the time, because I love structured exercise. I hate playing sport. I'm no good at sport. I don't have the hand-eye coordination. I'm not nimble. I don't have a great competitive drive, so I'm not really interested in winning anything. So sport is not for me. Watching it, love it. Doing it, no, thank you. I feel, dumb, and I feel incompetent. So that doesn't appeal to me. And as you say, we have to think about how individuals are different. So for the majority of people, a structured exercise environment is not intrinsically motivating. They don't get the same rush that I get from completing a strength workout or completing an indoor cycling workout. So we need to offer much more variety in our activity modalities. And we also, to your point, have to make people feel comfortable with doing something that doesn't look like exercise, doesn't feel like exercise, and doesn't come with strings attached around, you have to do it for X amount of time or to X intensity or this many times a week. And that for me is the biggest shift. And rather than thinking about how can we sort of tap into this GLP-1 market, et cetera, et cetera. Actually, if we think about how could we offer different services that will appeal to people for whom the current service doesn't appeal, and actually put ourselves in those shoes. And to your point about personalisation and individualisation, the evidence is really clear that the more you can personalise, the more likely someone is to maintain that adherence to that behavior. They're getting personalized support. And a lot of that is about getting the right advice at the right time, of course, but also a lot of it is just about feeling seen, feeling heard, feeling listened to, feeling valued,
Yeah.
feeling that you're in partnership with somebody. And of course, when somebody has the resources to have a personal trainer over the long period of time, that can work really, really effectively. And I know some incredible personal trainers out there. And digital has helped us to bring that to more people as well, which is fabulous. I'm a big fan of technology and how we harness technology. But if you think about individuals who have lower resources and also operators who are working on the lower margins, so they're trying to work at scale in order to stay commercially viable, we have to think cleverly about how they can do that personalization. And I do think technology really can play a part here. If we build the behavioral science into the technology, we can make it a lot easier, even at that sort of lower level in terms of budget, not in terms of service, to provide the level of personalization that's needed to support someone in the long term.
I think one of the things that we miss is we advocate for a coach approach. And this is me working, again, adjacent to the fitness industry, but stepping back after over 20 years, because it's very hard when your whole identity is wrapped up in something, as mine was in fitness, and look at it with a level of objectivity. But what we don't talk about is a coach approach for the professionals and operators that are working within the industry. And I agree with you, Joe. There has been some toxic messaging coming out of the fitness industry, but there have been some brilliant people and brilliant messaging coming out of the fitness industry as well. And I'm going back to, this is pre-COVID, which is interesting, where I was having a conversation with the president of a major health club chain. Obviously, I'm not going to mention any names. And what I had said is, if we take a look at first visit enrollment, and what I mean by that, was not an operator, somebody comes into your club, and the first visit that they make to your facility, they make the decision to become a member. And if you take a look at it, over 50%, 60% are deciding not to do that. What if we had an adaptable, flexible membership option for people within various stages of change? If you want to map that with the trans theoretical model, what do we do for people that are in preparation? Like, I will, but maybe not today, or even pre-contemplators, I might. And they're struggling with ambivalence. They have a lot of reasons why they truly want to make a decision, and they have a lot of valid reasons why they don't feel quite ready. What about those people? And the response was, that is absolutely absurd. Nobody is ever going to engage with fitness professionals outside of a gym. No one's ever going to do that online. And it's like, okay, just wait until 2023 okay, now what do you think? But for me to have the conversation, and by the way, this person I was speaking to was an incredibly compassionate and brilliant individual who I still tell stories about lessons I've learned from them. So respecting this person, say, but they've been in a certain frame for over 30 years. So my question with the CEO and with other leadership in that organization over the next few months was not like, how could you be so close-minded? How can you not see this? Let me ask you a question. What are we doing particularly well? Like, what as an organization, as an industry, do we do well across the board, and why? What are the reasons? Not related to the clients. I don't want to hear stories about valiant people who are willing to pay the price and they exert discipline. No, not them, us. And it came down to, well, the community, how people feel when they first walk through the front door, and it wasn't anything around, wow, our program design and movement assessments are top of industry. That was never even mentioned. It was all around interpersonal dynamics that engage people strategically and interpersonally. So my question was, what is it about our real estate, the boxes that we build that facilitate that, where it can't happen outside of our four walls? Like, what's the magic? Is it like in the paint? Do we have like fairy dust like built into it? Like, do we hire Harry Potter? And like, that's what facilitates this response. Everything we're talking about is interpersonal dynamics. And it's like, oh, wait a second. So how do we build on that? Because if we could take a look at what we're doing really well and say, okay, well, what are the elements we could extract? What might be some novel ways to engage our clients and have flexibility, adaptability in us the same way we advocate that for them? I mean, not to mention, if a COVID-like event happens, touch wood, pray it does not, your model might not survive. So that might be a constructive conversation.
Yeah. And I've been speaking for a while about this sort of, mad utopian vision I have, where if you take, for example, someone living with obesity, who is about to embark on a GLP-1 journey, that where they start that journey is with what we would recognize as a fitness provider, but they wouldn't be referred to as a fitness provider. But take any of the operators that we know of, they could be where that person goes to start that journey. Because in the UK, 90% of people are paying out of pocket for the drugs. 80% of those are getting it through an online provider, where the diet and physical activity advice they're getting is generic, and minimal at best. And so, what we would rather is that they got the drug through someone who cares about doing things well. Like you said, we know operators who have really high quality in what they do. And that initial conversation where they're starting on the drug does all the good clinical things around making sure that they're the right person, making sure there's no contraindications, making sure they start on the right dose, they get advice about how to administer the drug, how to deal with the side effects, etc. And part of that sort of, package is, we will provide you with dietary advice, we will provide you with physical activity advice, and there is also the opportunity to come and do some physical activity either through our app, or in our community walking group, or you can come into this gym that just happens to be here, and so it's very much positioned as a holistic service. So someone comes for the drugs, but they also, as a little bonus, get these other services to use. But there's no pressure to use them. They're there for you as and when you are ready to use in a way that works for you. But that person is now part of your community, as you said, and community for me is absolutely crucial. In any behavior change, we know that one of the greatest facilitators is social support, and feeling part of a community. So they become part of your community even if they've never stepped inside the gym. They have access to professionals who can guide them through dietary changes, who can offer them lots of different ways to be active if they want to, but can also reassure them that there's no pressure. It's one step at a time. We're here for you when you need us. At the point at which they then might start to want to engage with some physical activity, they get multiple ways to do it. And when they do it, they're encountering staff and members who are all on the same page in terms of empathy, compassion, being there for the right reason. Those people, to me, are going to be the loyalist members that you will ever have. They will stay with you for 5 years, 10 years. You never have to make a special effort to get them to renew their membership. You don't have to offer them discounts. Why would they go anywhere else? You are who they associate with them feeling better. But that's not the model that we're working to. The model we work to is join the gym. If you don't come within the first 2 weeks, we'll hound you with some emails and some phone calls, because we know if you don't come within the first 2 weeks, or whatever the statistic is, you're probably going to cancel your membership. And that's not the way that most individuals want to be supported. As you say, if they're in a frame of mind where they have the motivation, they have the intention, but they're not yet doing it, there's a reason why they're not yet doing it. And reminding them that they should be doing it is counter to the effect that we want.
Totally agree.
I mean, I feel bad that I was obviously a little bit mean about the industry, but I love it because I've been in it for 35 years. I do love it, but I just thought, well, we need to
I was like,
fan
where's
that
all this
bubble a
vitriol
little
coming
bit.
from, Joe? My goodness.
She's reached the end of her tether.
I was like, no, I'm going to let it all out. No, but it was good to sort of get into that. I realise we're sort of getting close to being out of time. There were a couple of things that I really wanted to say, that because I think it's brilliant. You've given some really great takeaways, the collaboration, the community, getting to know the individual. There's a cost. You mentioned that. It'd be nice to do that. And I think it might be nice as well just to cover some of the symptoms, the side effects that people might get that might be useful for operators to be aware of. I mean, and I personally think any operator, any trainer with good nous will recognize many of those symptoms as they walk through the door. We look at someone's posture, the way they hold themselves tells us so much about their mood and all of those things, whether they've slept and everything like that. But it would be great to have a little bit more information on that.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, cost-wise, certainly in the UK, it's actually astounding how many people are paying for these drugs because we've had the National Health Service for, can't do the maths now, but 70 years or whatever it is, 80 years. We are culturally, conditioned that healthcare is free. And so I think what is interesting, and we had this conversation at the HFA Congress as well, is that most individuals who are paying this for these drugs, I don't think they're viewing it as healthcare because they wouldn't be paying for it. They'd be sitting tight and waiting for the NHS to come around. So they're not necessarily viewing it as healthcare. They're viewing it as a solution to a problem that they have, in the same way that they might purchase a beauty product, or they might engage with some other sort of services that aren't health related. So this is where I think we get the issue where people see sort of gym membership or GLP-1s as an either or in terms of where they spend their money, whereas actually they really should be combined. But it is astounding that so many people, I mean, we're looking at well over 4% of the adult population in the UK are currently using GLP-1 drugs for obesity. So there's plenty of people out there who are being prescribed them for type 2 diabetes and other conditions. But as a primary condition of obesity, we're looking at many millions of people now who are using them, and they are paying out of pocket. And that means that we're going to have an exacerbation in health inequalities for sure, because the people who can afford the drugs will get the drugs, and they will reap the benefits of them. And those people who are on lower incomes and aren't able to afford them, who are already primed for poorer health and shorter life expectancy, we'll get into that situation. In terms of the side effects, I mean, and again, what we also see is people having to make difficult choices about the spend. So if they spend the money on the drugs, actually, is their grocery budget reduced? So are they eating poorer food because that's what they can afford, because they're prioritizing the spending money on the drugs? Everything is interconnected. There's a real knock-on effect here. But yeah, the side effects are, as I said, significant. And of course, if you are either a pharma company or you are a provider of GLP-1 drugs, you have to disclose that there are side effects, but it's not in your interest when someone says, I'm thinking about trying this drug, can you tell me about it? To then give them the real reality of what it's like, which is why we see such attrition. And when we see that attrition, GLP-1s just becomes another broken promise for people with obesity. They've tried the meal replacements, they've tried the going to the gym, they've tried, the diets and all of these other things. They've all failed, and this just becomes another letdown for them, which again is why I feel like they should be getting those drugs from individuals who understand the human body, the responses, and they understand how to what advice they need to give to help minimize those. Because if someone's gone to that effort and that expense of starting the drugs, we really do want people to be able to continue on that journey to get the clinical benefits, which is minimum 5% weight loss, ideally 10% weight loss, because the cardiometabolic improvements are absolutely incredible. And, as a sort of, as we head towards the end of this conversation, I think for me, that's where the real shift needs to come, is that actually somebody might come to use these drugs because they want to lose weight. That's their surface motivation. But actually, when we talk to GLP-1 users who have considered themselves successful on that treatment journey, and you ask them what's been great about taking these drugs, what they talk about is what they can do now that they couldn't do before, being released from pain and discomfort, the lack of social stigma, the ability to play with their children, walk up the stairs in their office building without getting out of breath, do activities that they maybe did 20 years ago that they wanted to do but couldn't. So we need to acknowledge that the initial motivation might be about weight, and we need to try and shift that conversation very quickly to actually, what are you going to gain, not what are you going to lose? What are you going to gain from going on this journey? And we can take objective measures again. So again, the fitness industry is set up to measure objective outcomes. We can show changes in cardiovascular health. We can show changes in body composition. We can show changes in physical function and physical fitness. All of that feedback is going to help keep someone on that journey because it's reinforcement of that behavior, but also helping them to connect with, actually, how has my life changed for the better as a result of being on these drugs, not as a result of losing weight.
One of my clients, actually, she said the biggest thing for her was she lost her mum in her mid-50s, and she was always really worried that she wouldn't see her kids grow up. And she went to her daughter's wedding, and it was the fact that she was able to go to the wedding, and she just, and for me that was that realization, yes, it's so much bigger than her initial reason for taking the medication, and reduced, pain around her knees, all of those sorts of things. And I think that's definitely where the positives are in it. Those health benefits, for some people it is an absolute lifesaver.
It really is, yeah.
I have loved this conversation. Thank you so much, Lou.
It's
Really
been a
appreciate it.
pleasure, yeah, and I'm sure we could talk for longer, but no one wants to listen to us talk.
Well, I was going to say thank you so much for coming, and I would love you to come back because I think there are some more areas to go into. I think obviously as operators and trainers start to do this, but actually forming that collaboration, I think is really important. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, and it's definitely an evolving area. So, the conversation is going to continue to develop and evolve as we learn more and we try new things. And I hope that we can work with lots of operators who are brave and want to be sort of leading the way in this field and making the difference that they've always wanted to make.
And you'll give me all your details so we can put them in the podcast, but where can anybody get hold of you if they want to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place for me is LinkedIn. So yeah, we can put my LinkedIn profile on there, and I've from there you can find white papers that I've written around this, and I've just released a GLP-1 guide for fitness operators in collaboration with Twin Labs. So you can get a free download of that, which is really focused on understanding the GLP-1 user profiles and how we have different people using these drugs. They're not all one size fits all, and some practical strategies as well to consider implementing to help be that supportive wraparound care that we know that the users desperately need. So you can get all of that via my LinkedIn profile.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.